Welcome back to All the Work, my restoration of my 1988, well, maybe 87. Finding out now it's probably an 88. 1988 Ski Supreme. I am a stay-at-home dad who had this boat sitting around in the garage for the last 9 years, and my wife looked at me and said, let's get the boat going, and so I went in full dive. There was a big crack under the engine mount that I had to repair that led to needing to have the whole driver's floor out and everything. I worked super hard. I got all the old foam out, about 600 pounds of foam, lifted the boat up, poured new foam in it. It's fresh, it's seaworthy, it's not taking on water. I learned everything as I went and did as much as I could, and the engine went back in at the end of last summer. Now it is late May, and I've got about 2.5 weeks left of the boys in school to have full days to work on this thing. So I am pedal to the metal. It's day 102. I'm really trying to get this thing ready for painting. I've gone through, I've done all the fairing. I've sanded it once. I think at this point I'm cleaning up to do another round of fairing. I am really trying to keep the engine clean through all this. I've got a lot of dust flying around. I don't want to screw up my engine, so I'm making sure that I'm covering it at all times. And the dash itself, I attempted to remove it. However, the plastic that composes the dash is so brittle and old that it immediately started cracking, so I screwed it back in. I still got a bunch of cracks in it, but it looks good as far as the vintageness of the boat. The dash is good enough. So I've masked that off super well with tape and paper. I used the white tape, painter's masking tape, and I leave it on for 2.5 weeks and let it sit in the sun and everything. So when I undo that, it's all gooey and everything. So I guess in the future, it's either use different tape or remove the tape every 3 or 4 days, because if you leave it on too long, it gets gooey and nasty. But just another problem I deal with in this project. Right now, I've got my sander out there. It's a 5.5-inch random orbital sander that I got hooked up to my shop vac. It's a clunky setup, but it works, and it's been trusty this whole time. And I think I'm using 150 grit sandpaper at this point, which comes out pretty smooth and goes fast. And with the orbital sander, I can buzz right through it. I am being careful about sanding the beveled angles that I have. I have all these sharp angles all over the place, and I can't really round them super good with the orbital. So I'm trying to just stay on the flats as much as possible. Here I am tackling the large stress crack area where a tree fell on the side of the boat in a hurricane back in New Hampshire. I ground out all the stress cracks. I ground it all the way down to the fiberglass, like a 2.5, maybe 3 foot section. The paper?
Yeah.
What paper?
I was going to make the list today.
Oh, you need to make a list? Let's get you some paper. Okay, so Bryce has his paper. He is making his list. Yeah, so I had about a 2.5, maybe 3 foot section that I ground down to the fiberglass. It came into the middle of the gunnel, in towards the middle of the boat. So I was kind of going over that lip. So I have now fiberglass that up, put 2 sheets of 7808 on there, 1708 that is, and then sanded it down, and I did the fairing there. I really did it thick. I think I sanded a little aggressively with the orbital the first time around in that fairing. However, it worked out well. And now I'm just working my way the rest of the way around the boat and just trying to get it touched up, looking really good as much as I can. At some point, I take the head off of the orbital, or just disattach it from the hose, and then I go around the boat, vacuuming out all of the little faired spots with the shop vac. Each of the little dimples from the snaps that used to go around the side, they pinholed in the middle. So where the dimple was, I faired it, and then it pushed in, and so all those have just a little bit that needs to be done. Right there, I chased it around the boat with the Total Boat prep stuff, the cleaner. So I got everything really clean, so I'll be ready for fairing. I'm still using my trusty pizza box as my palette for the fairing. I am getting smarter about how much fairing I make in one go. At this point, I do about a tablespoon of each part. Mix that up really good. Careful to keep the sticks separate, so when I'm reaching in the bucket, I'm only getting pure blue or green compound. That's part A and part B with the total boat epoxy fairing compound. This is my final round of fairing and sanding. After this, I am pretty much full go that I'm going to paint this thing. We are going out on Lake Powell next weekend, and I had originally thought if I push super hard, I could have the boat ready for that Powell trip. Well, I'm not even close. Haven't even painted the boat. Then I was thinking I'm going to paint the boat before I go to Powell, and I'm not even close. So right now I'm going around the boat. I've got these little foam blocks, and I'm just putting 150 grit sandpaper on those, and I'm hand sanding around, getting all those beveled edges nice and hand sanded, smoothed over again so they won't look like a octagon going over. That's what they look like after I use the random orbital sander on it. The kids are in and out fighting over there, so I was a little distracted there for a second. So these little foam blocks are off of an old ski brake, actually. Back when that's the way the skis were shipped, they had these little foam blocks, so I'm wrapping the sandpaper around those. It gives me a nice contoured edge so I can smooth off all of these rounded bevels, make them look really good. I did all that by hand. I was really happy with it afterwards. A little bit of touch-up spots. That's a little round number 3 of the fairing. A little dabble do you there. Just some little tiny things that needed to be done. There was a little nick in the tail that was just going to bug me forever, so I got that. It really is amazing how little I see of the work I did here with the boat now, past this process, looking back, watching how much effort it took. I'm appreciating that I went through and did all this effort, that I knew early on this is just about putting the hours in. If I put enough hours in, it was going to work out okay, and it's totally true. So being diligent, doing all the things has made a huge difference. Here I am setting up for painting. I am drilling out the holes that are going to be for the new boat cleats that are going up on the nose of the boat. I'm actually taking the hardware out there and matching it up and make sure I have my holes drilled before I do the painting. Then I am going to mix up one last little batch of the fairing compound and go and do a little touch-up work that I need here or there. When I was drilling out the holes for the windshield, because I wanted to make sure my windshield holes were very obvious when I put the windshield back on, I drilled through a wrong hole and drilled up through and just added a new hole to the boat. So that was a total mistake, but easy fix right there. I was able to just do that last little round of the fairing compound, and bam, I fixed that. Now I am setting up to take care of the tail light situation. I am still not quite sure what I am going to do at this point with the tail light. Two options here. One is I could just paint over these holes with the paint that I have, and that'll be okay. Or I can just use the primer over the holes, and then I can gel coat over them. Gel coat is much better for underwater applications, and the paint is not good for underwater applications. So at this point, I'm still just trying to figure out what I'm doing there. I did a little sanding on those. I peeled away some of the masking. Again, that masking's been on there for a long time, so it's getting real sticky. It's leaving a goo. So I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing there. Now here is my handy dandy little setup where I take some wax paper and lay it out, and then I lay the tape over the wax paper, and I do 4 layers of that. And then I just take a bucket, draw a circle, carve that out. So I have little circle templates for my taillights. Now, I didn't have the right kind of wax paper for this attempt at that little move, so that didn't actually work. So I ended up just pushing the boat back in the garage, and now I'm sitting on like an hour or half an hour left in the day to figure out to do some work, and I'm just kind of moving the boat back and forth trying to figure out what I'm doing. Doing a little cleanup there at this point. Get the boat back in there, got everything cleaned up. Go pick up the boys and live to boat work another day. Day 103 of the project, and me and the family are actually headed down to Lake Powell for a Labor Day trip with some friends. But I wanted to get the sanding done from that little touch-up fairing that I done yesterday. And I really wanted to focus on my gunnel. I wanted to just do a finish session on this. Started out with a big 2x4 where I was sanding it down. Then I got out my little rubber pads and worked on the little bevels and contours, and really just wanted, I think I had an hour, maybe an hour and a half to spend, and so I just wanted to focus my efforts on this small area, get the gunnel all the way, sand it down, looking good, seamless integration, and then get packed up and head down to Powell for a weekend. Obviously, this boat's not going to Powell, but we're going to go have a fun time anyway. There was a time, maybe 2 weeks before this moment, where I legit thought that I was going to make it to Powell with this thing. And just like every other piece of this project, it turned out to be a full month after this day, maybe even a month and a week before this boat hits the water. So what I thought I could potentially do in 2 weeks took me 5, which I think more than double what you estimate is about the right amount of time for this kind of work, especially as a newbie. So that's what I got done. So I did this little work in the morning, got it vacuumed out, and then shut off the camera, and then I just scrambled and packed and went down to Powell. And so here we are, first day back at boat work since a sweet Powell trip. It was amazing, but I came to the realization down in Powell that the best feature on a boat is that it runs. And of all these upgrades that I'm trying to do and how great I'm trying to make it, it doesn't matter unless this boat is actually running. So I have a different focus at this point. Still have a ton of work ahead of me. I know this. I started out the morning. I power washed the boat, something I probably should have done ages ago, but just down in Powell, something I realized that needed to be done. Power wash around the boat so that'd be clean, because I am getting ready to paint. And as I'm getting ready to paint, I need to fabricate this L seat before I have paint on the boat, so that I'm not risking all this fiberglassing going on over fresh paint. So this has to happen first. So I have my two, king board boards. It's plastic, high density plastic board that I made templates for those two shapes with plywood, and just like I did, or I will do for the sea deck, I use those templates to router out this board in the right shape. And then I put the two boards in. I put sheetrock screws in all 4 corners so that the boards sit flush to the seat, so when the seat closes it'll be perfect. Now I do screw up here because I haven't put a screw in on the deck itself, on the bottom rim of the seat, into the middle support panel up in there. And once I do that, I actually change the geometry of this a little bit. So all this work I'm putting in right now is actually a little bit for naught because I didn't do that screw beforehand. But I'm setting that up for fiberglassing. But I am also trying to get set up for painting tonight. So what I'm doing here is I'm cleaning out the garage so that I have a good paint area in the garage. Andy at Boatworks today says that he does a full 2 weeks of cleaning before he paints. And I wanted to adhere to his stuff as much as possible. So here I am putting about 3 hours or maybe an hour and a half into what he does in 2 weeks. My buddy Will comes over, says hi while I'm cleaning up. And I sweep out the garage. I'm going to pressure wash the garage. I didn't dust. I wish I had dusted. And I wish I had figured something out about the bugs sooner. But anyway, that is me cleaning out the garage, getting ready for paint. That way, in the evening I can paint. I think I needed to wait for it to warm up to do the fiberglassing. Anyway, now we're back to pressure washing. So it looks like I started setting up and then realized, no, I should pressure wash it now in the morning. That way it can dry out all day. So I pressure wash out the garage, move the boat back in so I can do some fiberglassing in the shade, hopefully. Those are the templates. I cut these sections of fiberglass out weeks ago. It was one of the few things where I just had the supplies out. I was like, oh, I'll just do this now. So bam, I cut those out. So save myself time on this day so I could just set them in and start going, which makes a huge difference in fiberglassing, I'm finding. There's so much prep work. It's always so hard to plan on how much work goes into just getting ready to do it, let alone to doing it. So now I am doing it. First thing I did was laid out an 8-inch strip of 1708 across the bottom of it. I laminate that in with the polyester laminating resin, push all the bubbles out, did a pretty good job with it. I had the next sheet that was going to go over the entire thing laying over top of it, ready to set in, and I set it over it, and it started bonding to it immediately. So then I had to scramble. I had to run outside the boat, make up another batch of resin super fast, get back in there so I could adhere the full sheet to the little 8-inch strip that I put just at the seam. Now, I wish I had just kept those separate the whole time and waited 45 minutes in between those things like Andy at Boatworks today does, but I screwed up. Then Luke comes over. We just went to that Powell trip together, so I brought a bunch of stuff home in the back of my truck. He had some stuff in the back of his boat, and then boom, we're doing the trade-off now while the seat is drying. So I got that finished just in time. He was ready to go over and do the swappy swap after a sick vacation, and now I am back at the boat. Moving on to the next phase of this thing. I have now finished laminating the front of the seat. Possibly this is enough resin on the thing, but I really wanted to do a full wrap around the bottom as well. Now, that may have changed the way it sits into the seat. However, it's going to turn out fine. Great for my first try, but I'm not sure if I did that totally right. Now I'm chasing around with the vacuum cleaner, just doing a little cleanup work as I see that I'm getting ready to go back in to paint. I have the garage cleaned out as much as I'm going to, and now I'm just going around the boat, cleaning, getting this ready to paint. It is wild to be thinking like I'm finally painting this thing. This has been a long time coming. And in my head, I was always thinking like when I paint it, that turns the corner for me. Once it's painted, then I'm moving in the right direction towards the water. So this is extremely exciting for me. Somehow I thought I was going to have this done before Powell, but it makes sense that it was happening afterwards. And I'm just trying to take my time and be thorough about everything and clean it out. All the while setting up supplies for the next phase, getting my paint table set up and looking over the boat. Now here I'm removing the newly fiberglass passenger seat. If I had more time on this project, I would think that I would want that to sit for another at least half a day before I removed it. However, it was feeling firm really good, and fiberglass is just so remarkable, I'm finding. I pull it a little early. I set up that board so that it would make kind of a pinch of the seat so it wouldn't expand when I set it upside down. I think it worked. Seemed to work decently. I had some clamps out. I was pretty ready for it. So I unscrew the newly fabricated seat, push it over on this table. Now the resolution here is terrible because I'm videoing from indoors to outdoors, but this is me working on that upside down passenger seat. Here I'm cutting off these little drip holes. At some point I realized how heavy this board is that I have. It's heavier, way heavier than I want it to be. And so I wanted to lighten up the rear of the seat, so I drilled all these holes through it, not realizing that when I fiberglass that was going to be a huge issue. So I just spent probably 20 minutes there cutting the fiberglass that had run through those holes out of those holes, so when I do the real fiberglass over it, it works good. And actually I start with peanut butter. I mix up a thick mixture of resin and peanut butter in, so I have all these nice rounded edges. I fill in all those holes with the peanut butter, so who knows if I have any weight savings. And then lay the 8-inch strip of fiberglass over it. Looks like there I realized I should have plastic under, so I did that. So more moving of the seat after it's been initially set to its shape. This fiberglassing went pretty well. I was pretty happy with it. The next round of fiberglassing that I do, this one right here, does not go nearly as well. One thing I did to the seat and the rear backing of the seat, I scarred that really good with a razor knife, and I didn't do as good of a job of scarring this side of it with the razor knife, and I think that made a big difference in my polyester laminating adherence to the seat. Because what ends up coming out of this is about 60% of each back and bottom of the seat needs to be cut away because it's not adhering. So I make more work for myself in the future. But at this point, I'm looking at my fabricated passenger seat, the L seat modification, fabricated. That was a huge step for me. I didn't know if I could do that. I'd only seen it one time in the Ron Tanis videos, which I'll link to here. It's a totally awesome project. Looks easy on his videos, but much harder in person. Well, not that hard, but takes time. So that part's done. Super happy about it. And now it's just finish out the day, cleaning the boat, more details, vacuuming, detailing, cleaning up the old project, switching out to the new project. There I went to pick the boys up. The boys are home. I got a little bit more to do. You can see they're madmen. I get home and there's Dylan in his little car having a great time. And this is just a look at the life of doing boat work and being a dad. All this loitering around the driveway is really just a way for Amanda to go home so I could set up the bench and get the seat on there for gel coating. Thanks for watching all the work, and I hope you enjoyed this video and all the others.